Just want to thank everyone for being here for our twice a month finance and operations meeting. So thank you for what you've done to prepare. Okay. So we can begin with the information only items. Just want to ask if there are any questions about that. Mr. Pechowski, I see that you're here.
Yes.
Thank you. Would you please tell us about this agreement with Connecticut Orthopedics to provide medical services for our athletic events?
Yeah, so the orthopedic services are sideline orthopedics for football. They're mandated by the state to have on sideline during games, and they act as supervisory role to our athletic trainers and intervene in any medical emergencies that take place during those events.
Thank you very much. And I think I remember coming across this before, and there's been some satisfaction with this group and what they provide. Do we have the same group of orthopedic professionals kind of working with us, or do they tend to rotate through as staffing is available?
Fortunately for us, we use Dr. Merritt and his wife, and those two doctors cover all our games unless there's some kind of emergency where they can't be there. So we do have consistency, I would say 98% of the time, with one of those two doctors.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Wilcox, I acknowledge that you're on.
Hello. I apologize for my inexcusable delay.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for this information only item?
I have none.
Okay. I have none further. Mr. Pechowski, thank you very much. And Mr. Wilcox, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. And again, my apologies, and thank you, Dr. Yarborough, for getting us started. We'll jump right into the abstracts. The first one is 21st Century Learning Centers grant. Ms. Joseph Lumpkin.
Good afternoon. Christian Severus is stepping in for Ms. Joseph Lumpkin while she's away. I believe there's 3 abstracts, cohort 17, 18, and 19. I can hit all 3 of them at once if you don't mind, Mr. Wilcox.
So these are 3 abstracts for the grants. They're also okay, yes, please, all 3 at once. I see.
For sure. Yes. So cohort 17 is entering year 5. So there was a 50% deduction of the overall grant, which was 190,000. So there will be this is year 5 at the 95,000, if I'm not mistaken, or 90,000. And cohort 18 is entering year 4, which is a 25% deduction of the overall grant, which is leaving us with 150,000 for the year. And then cohort 19 is entering year 3, which we will still receive the full $200,000 grant as well.
Okay, are there comments or questions for these 3 abstracts? All right, I had none either. Thank you. We'll go ahead and jump into the agreements. The first one is an agreement with Lumen Touch LLC. Ms. Peters?
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, this agreement is with Lumen Touch. They are our vendor for the last several years because they've customized our data management program for our school-based health centers and our dental clinics, which comes to about 26 in total. And it allows us to be able to get data from every single site and manage that data. And they also align with Power Schools. And so they've been a great partner. So this is for $30,775. And I don't think there's anything more I can really add to that. They've just customized our program, which is what makes them unique. And they are considered a sole source.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions, Dr. Yarborough?
Yes, thank you. Is this just data management? Is this a different vendor than the one who, I think we have a vendor who helps with rebates or entering in billing? That is a different vendor than.
Yes, that's it. We had a billing company for our dental clinic, all our dental clinics. And without that, we wouldn't be able to keep the program going because they will bill for any eligible services for dental. This is really data management. We have so many different partners with the school-based health centers, 5 different agencies. If this allows us to put data from all those agencies into one place. And so therefore we can compare across sites and across agencies about what and know what the needs are, what services our students are getting. So it helps us also to allocate resources knowing that.
Great. Thank you so very much.
All right, thank you. Hearing no other questions, let's go on and move on to number 2, which is an agreement with Total Communications. So Ms. Herrera or designate.
My name's Ed Connolly. I'm just the designee. This is going to provide the hardware, software, and services needed to install what's being called a dual data center. It provides the back-end infrastructure that allows everything to connect, get to the internet, and it's being done in a resilient manner to improve the resiliency and the overall bandwidth and security of the network. To give you a high-level overview, right now all internet access comes through the Gateway Center. This will provide everything that would allow internet access to come into both this location and another location, so that if one were to go down, the other one would pick up the load. On an average day, that load would be split so that half is going here and half is going through the secondary data center. This is not just internet access. This is also all of the back-end services that make the network function.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, this is just a clarifying question. I think I could be wrong that there's some data services that we provide where we get help with the bill, but this we are being asked to pay the full 1.5 million.
That's correct. None of these services that are included in this package qualify for E-rate.
Okay. And have we purchased this before, or is this the first time?
This is the first time we've purchased this particular package in this particular way. So we have an existing firewall, we have existing switches, cores, hard drive servers, etc. A lot of that stuff is either at the end of its useful life or at the end of its supported life. This is being wrapped up into one package to make it more cohesive and get it back on its support cycles.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess my last question is this amount in addition to like above and on top of the services we are currently paying for, or this bundles some of our existing services together and as additional services? I'm trying to see if we are adding $1.5 million expense to our budget, or if it's not that we're just adding on.
Okay, so this is going to be a $1.5 million one-time expense. This is not going to be. I'm sorry.
One time this year.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a point in the future where certain pieces of it will have to get replaced, but you're talking easily 5 to 10 years down the road on most of this. This is not replacing any existing services or expenses at this point. There are other services that interact with this. Those went through E-rate because they could. The fiber optic feeds that are going out to the schools, the internet access that's going out to the that's being purchased, those have already been taken care of. So I guess the short answer to your question is yes, this is a add-on to what is being spent. It should be a one-year expense.
Okay, thank you. And I said that was my last question. But is there a kind of service package or warranty for some of the hardware?
Oh yes, everything is coming out of the gate with a 3-year warranty built into it. At the end of that 3 years, there are pieces of it that will likely be extended. There are pieces of it that will not likely be extended. For example, the warranty on the firewalls is something that IT would be very interested in extending because they are unique animals. Some of the switches that are in there probably not going to extend the warranty beyond the initial extension because that is something that we have or we will have bulk of. These are the same switches that are used in the schools. This is the beginning of an upgrade to a new generation because the generation that we have is simply going out of support.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wilcox, I think generally speaking, I support updating our technology infrastructure for security reasons, for efficiency reasons. And I'm also just trying to understand the budget implications of the investment. But generally speaking, I see value in making an investment.
I think one thing to note is that it's a capital fund. So it's the spending's coming from capital funds and not the operating budget. Of course, we love to see things paid for out of grant funds and so on, but this is apparently it does fit into the capital project budgets for this year. So
great.
And so if the concern is that it's impact on the operating budget where we are going to need to be mitigating a deficit, that's not going to be the case. Although I'm sure if we ask Mr. Lamb, he would love to see more funds in the capital projects account for all the capital project needs throughout the district in terms of core building maintenance and infrastructure. Mr. Lamb, your hands up.
Just a comment on this. The capital outlay for IT was presented to Board of Aldermen when the capital budget was presented, and this project was part of that capital outlay plan. So it is earmarked. There are earmarked dollars within the current capital budget for this expense.
Great, thank you. Is that a budget I can find online and use it to follow as we have our finance meeting?
That's actually something that's discussed during the building stewardship committee. Okay. But I can certainly send you the spend that we've had on that line or those lines. There's not a budget presentation specific to capital, but there certainly can be.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wilcox, to your point, I appreciate knowing where the funds come from for this, and I do support the investment for the reasons that others have mentioned. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Hearing no other comments or questions, we'll go on to number 3, an agreement with Adriana International. Mr. Pachowski.
So that is our agreement for athletic trainer coverage. As recommended by you guys last year, we have posted and seeked having full-time athletic trainers hired by the district. There is a national shortage of athletic trainers. We're able to secure 2 that will be going through the board for hiring. This will cover the 3rd position needed for the 3rd high school. We are currently still looking for that 3rd position, so the contract does have a 30-day cancellation clause in it by us if we are able to find that position.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? The question that I had was related to the, it's checked off on one of the forms that this would be a sole source, where typically there would be a sole source number. If I could just finish, you also mentioned that you did go through a process of a statewide search looking for other options to this one, and that this is the better one. Could you just elaborate on whether or not this is a sole source that went through purchasing, or just give us a synopsis as some of the how you did the statewide search?
Yeah, so that is an error that we said we were going to send and correct. That should go in as medically exempt, medical personnel exempt, how we put it through last year. So someone had reached out to us today, and we had sent back to them that we that was the case. And that we would be sending a correction after this meeting.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is an exemption possible through the city's purchasing.
Yes, so we'll be sending a corrective narrative tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much. And if that could get posted, Ms. DeMayo, that I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Hearing and seeing no other comments or questions, let's move on to number 4, an MOU with Elm City Montessori. Ms. Bonanno.
Yep, so this is the operating MOU between the New Haven Board of Education and Elm City Montessori. The substance of the MOU has not changed. The only difference to flag for the board this year is that we pulled out the financial piece, and we'll do that as a financial agreement, since that will happen annually. And we did that so that the operational component can be in existence for the same amount of time that the board approved for the charter extension. So to come back to the board every year with the same substance in an MOU and then to attach the financial agreement did not make sense to the team. We are still in the process of negotiating the in-kind contribution from NHBS to Elm City Montessori, which is why the financial agreement is not on tonight. But we wanted to move forward with at least the operating partnership, given that school will be starting soon.
All right. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for your team's kind of thoughtfulness around how to arrange this. For this MOU, is it subject to a financial agreement?
No, so it breaks down how we arrive at the financial agreement. So it describes the process of arrive there. We will come back to the board with the annual financial agreement, which would be the cash contribution that the Board of Education has to send to Elm City Montessori. This just talks about the arrangement, the details of the arrangements, the processes that we use, the commitments that we've made as partners.
Okay, thank you. And for the financial part, just trying to understand that, is there a clear calculation for it, or is it actually negotiated? I'm trying to think, is there a scenario where there is not agreement reached in time?
No. So the state identifies what the per pupil contribution is going to be every single year. We multiply that by what we have for their projection enrollment. So for next year, that's 310 students. And right now we're working out the in-kind. So a portion of the MOU describes that NHPS is going to give a portion of services as in-kind, and then the remainder as a cash payout, which is what will come across to the board. So the per pupil is set in stone. It's that we are deducting down from the total amount what all of the in-kind services are. That's hard to do when we don't know all the staffing salaries. So we try to get as close to an in-kind number as possible because the MOU requires us to stick to that in-kind. So we will never come back to the board to increase the cash allocation. We will agree on an in-kind, and if that starts to come in under because maybe somebody resigns mid-year, then we would negotiate how we'll give them something else in kind, like IT services or something like that, to make up the difference that we are legally required to give them for their per pupil.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me understand. Thanks.
Oh, no problem.
So thank you for clarifying that this hasn't changed over previous MOUs with them, other than the separating out the financial thing. That makes sense. My question is one of process on a couple different levels. So this is listed here as a 1 year, but inside the MOU, it actually goes into 2027. And so we want to, I think first off, Ms. DeMayo, this should probably be listed as a separate item under the action items and not just lumped in with the F&O items. So
Okay.
On the full board agenda, that it's just like we typically do with other MOUs.
Right.
And then my question is, so we have an agreement with them we're making an agreement with them through 2027. This does not have the financial piece. We're going to have individual financial pieces each year because changes can happen year to year. And so this goes into that question of, is this a one-year financial arrangement or a multi-year that needs to go before the alders? And I don't recall if the alders have already looked at any aspects to this. So I don't know that I want to spend a lot of time tonight on this one, but I think we need to clarify what we need to do moving forward on this. So if I could request, Ms. Bonanno, the memo that's here.
Yes.
If the memo, if you could just add into this memo, the two pieces that I see are relevant is that this MOU is going to cover through into 2027. But then there's going to be financial pieces that'll happen each year. And then the one for this current fiscal year will soon follow. But then if I don't know who the proper person is, Attorney Alexiades or somebody, just to see what we need to do to make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do in terms of this isn't exactly a purchasing policy, but it's an agreement that I wonder if we need clarification from the city on. Ms. DeMayo?
Yes, do we, so we want to change the end date here to June 2027?
And so that's another reason to separate it out as its own line on that action items for the board agenda. And then there will be definitely questions about what, if any of this goes before the alders. So if we had answers for that, I don't know, this week, but definitely by Monday night.
Yes, we will follow up on that.
Thank you so much. Anything else connected to this?
Not to this, no.
All right. I'm sure the fun part is the financial arrangements, the details of that. So I wish you well.
Oh, thank you.
We'll move on to the next one, which is number 5, also Ms. Bonanno, and it's an agreement with ACES.
Yes, so this is our annual agreement for arts program on the Magnet School program that we do with ACES. As you know, ACES is the regional service center for our area. So this does not require us to go out to bid because they are the only ones that are identified by the state to provide such services. This covers the professional development, the arts components at both Betsy Ross and Co-op, and includes a portion of our MSAP funds to do suburban outreach. So with ACES being the rest for all of the areas around us, they are a good partner to help us to do our suburban outreach, get us into the schools to support the Interdistrict Magnet program.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? All right, and my only question is, obviously, since it's here, but just ask the question anyways, this remains the best way to do this and not hiring in-house. If I remember correctly, it's that ACES is able to bring a wider variety than a couple individual people would, and I'm just wondering if that remains the same.
That remains the same, but we are continuously looking at it as the state relaxes its requirements for certifications. We will continue to look at the partnership. We review it annually. It starts in about April with the principals, Dr. White, et cetera, to make sure that we are organizing the best arrangement for the school so that the program is as robust as possible. But, we will look at it again for next year, given some of the relaxed certifications.
All right, thank you very much. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll go on to number 6, which is an amendment to the agreement with the Boy Scouts of America. Mr. Tabaris.
Yes, so this amendment is to support 2 overnight sessions for students 7th through 8th grade in the New Haven public school system, to just give them an experience outside of their own community and go out into the wilderness and actually participate in an overnight camp for 7 days each session.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you. When will this happen?
So this did already occur, and I do want to apologize to the board for the submitting this after the fact. The reason this was submitted after the fact is because the prices for the camp did actually go up, and we did not receive quotes for the overnight camp until July 14th, which was 4 days prior to the submission on the 18th. But the Boy Scouts have been a continuing partner for us, and they're strong, they're trusted, and we decided to move forward with this to provide this opportunity to 200 students in New Haven Public Schools.
And thank you. What was the attendance?
So from the attendance, yes, they actually went over the 200, but they gave us 14 students in kind. 20 students in kind. So it was a total of 220 students who participated in the overnight camp.
Okay. Yeah. My thought is $90,000. So, and this, just to clarify, okay, this is for this current fiscal year, right? Is this agreement for this current fiscal year or for
Correct, yes.
the fiscal year that just passed? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem.
And that goes to a question that I have in the documentation. It mentions 2 seasons.
Yeah, I did notice that typo.
Places, and
yeah,
I'm trying.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so my question was similar, I think, to Dr. Yarborough's. Does that mean 2 sessions? Is the season this summer, next summer? Is all the cost?
Yes, there was a typo by our contractor. It meant sessions, so it's 2 sessions, 2 overnight sessions, not 2 seasons. So this is all within the same fiscal year.
Okay, and so my understanding from looking at the documentation and from your conversation here today, that we typically do we do this overnight camp. There was an opportunity to expand that.
Correct, yes.
And so you all went with that. The risk of this is if the board does not approve this, then you all have a big mess on your hands, because people have done work that was not approved by the board at the time that the work was done. So understanding that sometimes there's opportunities for events and things that we've talked about in the past, a camp that we use in some way, shape, or form for several years now, expanding that. I suggest moving forward that if big items like this are going to happen, communicate with the Finance and Operations Committee. Make sure that you kind of have some folks that are aware of what's happening, and that if there were any red flags that one of us wanted to raise, like, wait a minute, that you could make adjustments early on.
Yes, sir. It will be noted for the next submissions, and we want to avoid this moving forward. So we will be mindful of this, and we'll be sure to do better as we move forward. That
said, I'm fully supportive of kids having an opportunity to get out of town, get out of the city, get in the woods. It's life-changing. It can be life-changing if someone doesn't have an opportunity to do that a lot. It's just, changes your daily life just to do it for an hour. If we go for a walk in the woods. So all for this, just saying that that's an issue.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, I'm in favor of the experience as well. And in my head, I'm trying to do the math, $45,000 for 1 week. Though I do recognize it's 110 children, students perhaps per week. The other thought or comment that comes, you mentioned that there was a price increase from the Boys and Girls Club, and so there's a way that we can have a heads up about that. I don't know if they communicated that to you afterwards or before, but just knowing what that increase is. If we had a signed agreement with them, I don't know that we should be obligated to pay a flat rate increase. So I'm not sure how it came about where it is right now, but moving forward, I would like us to have an agreement with them on what the rate is going to be, and then we can decide whether or not we want to move forward. I don't know that we can keep justifying a rate increase each year, though I do understand the cost of living increases, the cost of fuel, supply increases. But I don't know if they're charging us that increase or they're charging us surplus above that, which is kind of their prerogative to do, but also our prerogative to evaluate.
Of course. And from what my discussion with the Boy Scouts, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did were you done with
I
your
just
thought?
want to note that it also, the documentation says it's $450 per student for 7 nights, all inclusive of the meals and everything. So if anybody knows of a outdoor camping experience for less than $450 for 7 nights, I'm sure this office would love to hear about it, and so that they can take advantage of it next summer. But it's
Not for 100
price.
Not for 100 students, but
It's a pretty good price at $450 a piece for 7 nights. But
Yeah. And the main increase in the pricing of this overnight camp was the transportation needs. The transportation has gone up, as you mentioned, the fuel costs, and actually the reservation for the buses have also increased, and that was noted in the proposal as well, and the conversation that we had with the Boy Scouts of America.
okay. Thank you very much.
No worries.
well, we have learned a thing or two about the cost of transportation, so that's understandable. Thanks for that extra detail.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing else on this item, let's go ahead and move on to number 7, agreement with Cornell Scott Health Center. Ms. Peters.
Yes, hi. This agreement was covered in funding under the DPH abstract that was presented I think 2 meetings ago. So they just didn't get their paperwork in. So they're our last health partner that was covered under that abstract and was approved. So it's Hill Health Center, Cornell Scott Hill Health Center, and it covers $410,400. Helps to support 6 of our DPH funded school-based health centers. They actually staff more than that, but this funding is only from DPH for those specific school-based health centers. So they provide mental health, medical providers, and office staff. We have a comprehensive model in all of our schools. So they're providing it and getting support for the 6 schools: Clemente, Davis Street, Hill Central, King Robinson, Truman, and Lincoln Bassett.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I have none either, so thank you.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and move on to number 8, which is one of, I think, 3 tonight with Foundation for the Arts and Trauma. Dr. Perrone.
Thanks, Mr. Wilcox. Good evening, everybody. So our model is a little bit different than the high school model with the Miss Kendra program operated by the Foundation for the Arts and Trauma. They provide stress reduction and drama types of play sessions with individual students who need them, but more broadly, they work with the whole class, grades 1 through 8. Actually, it's 1 through 6, and the 7 and 8 model is a little bit different, where they come in and run a program that allows the students to share worries and different experiences that they've had. It helps train the teachers in fielding difficult conversations, talking with the kids. And what we've seen is an overall reduction in stress and student behaviors that are that take away from learning. So when the students who have a lot of worries or who are stressed out, when they return, they're more regulated and can acclimate better into the classroom, and that then decreases the stress of the entire class. They also offer some different survey questions when students come in. They talk about they basically just rate how they're feeling upon entry, and we share that during our morning announcements just about once a month. It just helps in being able to talk about emotions, to talk about and label ways to manage those emotions, and some helpful strategies to be able to get through difficult times. And so that is helpful across the board. Certainly it supports our social and emotional learning, and post-pandemic has been crucial in helping our school climate in general. This is the last year of the ESSER funds, of course, and so this will be the last time that we have the program at the extent that we have been able to these last 2 years.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you, Dr. Perron. Just want to appreciate the data that you've included in the documentation over some years around in-school suspension and other things for the schools that have participated in this program, have had this service. And I would say continue to provide, updated data through this coming year about what the changes have been, maybe what the impact has been. I just appreciate seeing what this contractor or vendor is able to provide, and some of the metrics that are important that may speak to how our students are doing in school. So thank you for taking the time to include that. There's some data up to 2021. There's some data that ends at 2017. But continue to add it. I appreciate seeing it. Thank you.
All right.
And if I could add two things,
Please.
Mr. Wilcox, is that possible?
Please.
So the first is just, I wanted to thank the committee. Our ropes course has been installed. We're waiting on training that'll be happening. And this is at Edgewood specifically. That is going to provide just a tremendous amount of joy and team building and all sorts of different trainings and things like that to not just Edgewood students, but we're trying to incorporate more. We're going to have the Project Pride crew come in as well to be trained so that they could use the space during school hours, after school hours, during the summer, things like that. And I just wanted to throw out an idea. We are and have been enjoying Nature's Classroom with our students. And we figured out that using Camp Cedar Crest is an extremely cost-effective way of utilizing an outdoor adventure space that has a high ropes course that was installed by the same company, High Five Adventure or something. Anyway, I'm forgetting that. But it's a great location. It is free for the buses because it's only in Orange. And just in terms of considering the Boy Scout overnight group, this was an option that we are going to be exploring for next year when our current funds have been depleted with where we usually go for Nature's Classroom. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And the Project Pride crew would be the ones to operate the high ropes course at Camp Cedar Crest. And so there would need to be, of course, an agreement to pay them for that. But it's certainly a wonderful location. I've been to a lot of overnight adventure camps in my life, and it's spectacular. So just wanted to throw that out there as a cost-saving measure, and shout out also Mr. Petrosky for his work overseeing the Project Pride crew and the ways that they are working with students in New Haven.
Thank you for naming all this.
Thank you. Hopefully someone's taken notes on that suggestion, and we'll pass the word along about those opportunities or the future possibilities there. For this particular one, I didn't have questions for you, Dr. Perron. Just in general, since we're doing, seems like an increasing amount of work with the Foundation for Arts and Trauma, just, if there's I think there's 3 today, and I think there might have been 5 in the past or 4. I'm trying to remember, but just if there's any efficiencies that can happen in terms of either with costs or staff time and putting these together, if we're going to be working with them a lot. I don't know if there's something to look at there, but I will just say, while I have you on the line, we don't often we have 3 principals here, Ms. Coleman and Mr. Brown as well. I hope you all have a good year ahead of you. Just wanted to take a moment just to say thank you for the work you're about to be doing. And I hope to be able to come see you all sometime in September or early October. All right. If there's nothing else on this item, let's go ahead and move on. Thank you, Dr. Perron. We'll move on to Ms. Coleman. And the first one is an agreement with Dr. Constance Catrone.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. Nick, thank you for that. I will add an amen to everything that he mentioned. We did last year, and hopefully we'll do again this year. Our seniors do their beginning of the year activity at Camp Cedar Crest. It's a bonding, and it gets them together and plan goals for the year. This particular agreement, you can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. This agreement is for Dr. Catrone. We run at Metro something that's called a turnaround room. It is a drop-in type center for students. It's also training for master's social workers. My current social worker at Metro is a product of this program. So we can attest to how New Haven can benefit from it. It's a training center for them. We usually have from 6 to 7 social workers. They work various days. The turnaround room is where students can make appointments, or if they're having difficulty in class, they can get a pass from the teacher. Some of them are scheduled appointments. Dr. Catrone actually manages them. She has weekly meetings with them. They attend our school and staff support team meetings weekly. They run boys and girls club, different programs. They do lunch programs with students, talking to them about various things that they need to talk about. They usually run a freshman group, which helps to acclimate freshmen in their transition to high school and what it's like. They also work with the trauma alive clinicians. They work together. They do some training with the social workers. They do parent meetings as needed. They work with Clifford Beers Care Coordination. Dr. Catrone is our link to care coordination, usually if they're not in the building. And it helps. I believe you also see the scope of sequence. There's some data there. Dr. Yarborough, you were talking about data on the number of students that they see counseling. They've been instrumental in a couple of cases where we had potential suicide attempts. They stayed with the students, and Dr. Catrone usually manages them quite well to make sure that they are doing what they need to do, and helps. They also do professional development with teachers if they have questions on students and their social emotional issues. Any questions?
All right. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, I was going to thank you for the data. So thank you for putting it there. It's I appreciate seeing it. And I think you also named that there might be sessions that happen with parents and some teachers with training. So even having that data is very useful. It sounds like this might be a model for other schools in our district. I don't know if people come talk with you about how you're doing this and what you're doing, but I appreciate that it's there. I do know that it's some in the past, maybe the past year, at a couple of the monthly student meetings where they would come together once a month, the student government groups in the various schools, and they would talk about having mental health support and other support and desiring it in their schools. So I appreciate this being here. Do people come, and do you see this as a model? And do you see it as something that might be able to happen at other schools? And maybe the conversation can happen elsewhere. But I'm curious about your insight, your experience, and what it would take financially and otherwise to make it happen.
I think it could be replicated. It's worth something to look at. It's I think part of what happens, I've been very active in schools that have school-based health clinics. In some buildings, the social work team and the teachers and staff within those buildings work to service some of these type of services that are done. However, I do think this is a model because it gives us an idea. It's also a training ground for us for future social workers in the district.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'll just add that I do think a model like that, the kind of a breakout room for folks to be able to take a break, talk with somebody, can really help alleviate some issues. I know when my wife was volunteering a lot at Riverside several years ago, she had a room, and she also kind of worked as a, just as a volunteer, as a way to, someone could come in, complain about something and leave, or get a hug, or cry.
That's exactly what it is. Teenage be listening.
It's so key. It probably headed off a lot of building conflict. Okay. Hearing nothing else on this item, let's talk about Metro's agreement with Foundation for Arts and Trauma.
Very similar to what Dr. Perrin was talking about. On the high school level, it's more of they do groups, they do individual work. We do referrals from our triple ST when we talk about students that need added work. Sometimes there's groups of students that need to talk to each other that are not getting along. They do some mediation, trying to get them to understand. They do role play. One of our trauma people this year also does spoken word. So she did an after-school spoken word program with the students, allowing the students to also work with her. She did an example, and they kind of worked together. They also did a program after hours at a bookstore. I share, this past year, I shared a clinician with Cross, which was also very helpful because we shared students. Some were siblings, some were at Metro, some at Cross. So she had a tied experience that was helpful in alleviating some issues between students and families. And they're just very helpful with items that we need. Sometimes just the encouragement. High school students don't necessarily see the purpose of the work and how they're handling things and how do they do it, get through things, and just engagement. So that's a lot of what we use them for.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I had none, so thank you very much. And hearing and seeing none, well, thank you for being here this evening, and good luck with the year. And
thank you on behalf of all of the administrators. Thank you for your patience and your kindness, and always considering us as you make these decisions. I listen often, so we do appreciate you.
Well, we appreciate you all as well. So thank you. All right. In so many ways, it's the principals and the APs and the other administrators that make it happen in the buildings with the teachers. So it's in the paras, everybody. It's this time of year where you really start thinking about, wow, a huge amount of effort's about to be expended. Okay, let's move on to some Head Start related items. So Ms. Derwin, the number 11 and agreements 11 and 12 are both with Shine Early Learning Center. So it probably makes sense to talk about those together so you can differentiate between what one agreement's for versus the other. So
yes, good evening, everyone. The first agreement is for the competitive grant writing. So currently we are required to recompete for the 5-year grant, and each year is approximately $6 million. So Shine, in the first agreement, that is being funded through the operating budget, which is a requirement of Head Start. That is to develop the grant and to help with the formatting, the arrangement, and timelines. The grant is being forecasted for notice on September 5th, with a due date of November 6th. So that gives us approximately 40 work days to complete the grant. These people are skilled at working with the rubric. The district has used this company before. So they do the project management, the outreach into the community for the supporting documents. And then we do the writing, but they do the refinement of the writing. Also the budget development with our fiscal inputs, and just put it together in a package. The second, number 12, is being funded through Head Start funds. And that's more of an implementation with targeted training and technical assistance. So the company works with us to do strategic planning, some data analysis, really works with the self-assessment process, and some of the components of Head Start that weigh really heavily in compliance. They are very in key with the things that Head Start is looking for scoring of the grant and in their evaluation of the program. They're also going to do in-person trainings and webinars throughout the year that people can access, but they will be targeted to specific groups, such as the health component, the family service workers. So it's really a comprehensive thing broken out, so you can see that there are 2 different services being provided with 2 different funding sources.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions on agreement 11 or 12? I don't have any either. I think you described it all pretty well, and I'm certainly in support of leveraging a relatively small amount of money to try to be competitive for the $6 million plus in Head Start grants. Yes, that's going to be an incredible. I know it's been I'm being part of the Head Start subcommittee or task force. I know that this has been a tremendous amount of work for you in your office and other folks in business office, etc. So thank you for that, and hopefully they're going to be able to help get this the final steps to success. All right, hearing nothing else on these, my understanding was number 13 was being pulled for now.
Yes,
And
due to some structural changes within the, we are pulling it temporarily. We may be using this vendor in the future for other related things, but
okay,
we're pulling it for now.
Thank you. So we will then move on to number 14, which is with Clifford Beers.
This is an agreement with Clifford Beers Guidance Clinic. This is for 2 mental health clinicians embedded within the program. The mental health clinicians provide services to staff, to families, and to children. We had 1 clinician on site in the past, and they were embedded in the Dr. Mayo site, which is our biggest site. But they were not often able to support our satellite sites and families and students there. So that is why we were looking to increase the service. It was very positive. Families are able to follow through in the summer independently and be seen at their guidance clinic. And this does fulfill a Head Start required performance standard. Years back, they did not have an agreement, and it resulted in a non-compliance. So this is a really important element of the program. All
right, thank you. Comments or questions? I have none other than just the comment that I do think that it's wise to be expanding this since it is a requirement. And as far as Head Start is concerned, they're not going to particularly care about one site versus another. They care about all the children at all the sites equally. So being able to have access for the other sites is going to be a good addition. All right, looking at the agenda, we'll move on to number 15 and start the Mr. Brown portion of the afternoon. So we'll start with number 15, which is an agreement with Excel Academy.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time and effort on all these. And I do have a string of 4. This first one here is for Excel Consulting. We contracted with them last year on an agreement to support our efforts to put a little more meat to the bone of our career preparation through our Health Academy and are looking to continue that relationship. We had 19 students go through this program last year. 100% of them earned the CNA certification. They are all now working towards licensure, which is the next step. We'd like to continue that process. The costing of this Excel Academy has gone up just a couple $100. They're still below the other quotes that we received in years past. We feel like it's a good relationship that we want to continue, and certainly something we want to be able to offer to our students. It sort of gives them the idea that not only are they getting a high school diploma, but a leg up on career. So we're requesting permission to continue that agreement.
Thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either. So we'll go ahead and move on to number 16, in agreement with the Cormier Consulting.
Thank you. And I'll speak for a minute about just sort of our approach that does link these next 3 agreements together. One of the things we're really focused on at Wilbur Cross is utilizing some of the research that should drive good instruction. And 2 particular pieces are relevant to these next 3. One is the recognition that typically in public schools, there's greater variance in teacher quality within schools than among schools, meaning that in one particular school, you may have the best ELA teacher in the whole district, and you also may have the most struggling math teacher side by side. And it doesn't really matter which school they go to, that happens throughout. And so one of the things we're trying to do is really create a little bit more of a uniform base about what our instructional model looks like at Cross, given the fact of our size, and given the necessity of constantly sort of having to hire new teachers. So we're looking for something that is evidence-based and research-based and drives a sense of what a common instructional framework should look like, so that students, many of whom, as you all know, are newcomers, many of whom are multilingual learners, reduce some of the cognitive load of going to 8 classes that have 8 different ways of talking about what the learning objective is, their learning outcome is. And so Dr. Cormier has experience in large urban high schools, most recently in Waterbury, several of whom were in the Commissioners Network, which Cross, of course, was a part of several years ago, and shares some similar characteristics, providing both that support for our staff, but also perhaps more importantly, the ability to take that idea of high quality instruction and brand it for Cross, creating deliverables that we can give to new hires about what a classroom looks like, what some of our approaches look like, and something that we can also use to recruit teachers, which is something we're in the process of doing throughout. So that's something we're excited about. We looked at a couple of different offerings, but Dr. Cormier really came out ahead, both in terms of his pricing and in terms of the product that he was able to deliver. So it's something we'd like to really base this. As you all know, I'm the 4th person sitting in this principal seat in the last 9 months here at Cross. We're really trying to establish a real solid framework for the next few years of what instruction looks like. And we think this is a good way to go.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you for presenting, and I just appreciate your kind of acknowledgement and understanding of the context and the potential of Cross, and kind of directly addressing it and working to strengthen it further. So thank you very much for this approach you're taking.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I had no questions on this item. So let's talk about number 17, your all's agreement with Foundation for Arts and Trauma.
Right, and I'll link 17 and 18, both of which are really similar to not only Edgewood, but to Metro. So the second piece of evidence that we're really trying to use to drive our approach here is the recognition. The Wallace Foundation came out with some really interesting research in 2020, which kind of caused people to reconsider the importance of administrators on student outcomes. A lot of the evidence for many years has indicated that teachers are the most important in-school outcome for student performance. But in 2020, the Wallace Foundation did an analysis meta-analysis of a lot of different studies that realize that administrators, i.e. principals and assistant principals, have a really significant effect on the impact of student outcomes. And so one of the things that we know about this is that the more we can support our principals and being instructional leaders, the more likely we are to have those increased instructional outcomes that we want to see with our students. And so the Foundation for Arts and Trauma does exactly what you've heard them describe to do tonight. They provide a tremendous amount of listening ear, a tremendous amount of skilled ability to support students who are in crisis or just having a rough day. The piece I want to highlight is every interaction they have, if they weren't in place, is likely an interaction that would therefore have to be taken by an assistant principal. So of the 630 contact hours that they have here across, that would be something that the assistant principals would have to catch students who are coming out who have issues that need support and need time, but don't necessarily need time from the instructional leaders who are trying to get into classroom and support teachers. So while the impact they have on reducing suspensions, on supporting student social emotional well-being has been well articulated by my colleagues, I just want to highlight the piece that what they do allows us to try to push more and more for the instructional staff to do that leadership work, which quite frankly is so essential to do what needs to get done to make CROSS what we all hope and know it can be. And that's a heavy lift. It's one we can't do without support. And Foundation of Arts and Trauma really gives us part of that support to take on those issues that kids need someone to listen to, need someone who has skill to help them manage and create coping strategies for staying in class, but also don't fill up the assistant principal's office and prevent them from getting out and coaching and supporting teachers on the pedagogical work we need them to be doing.
Right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? I have none either. So let's look at the final one for you, which is the an agreement with Laura Goldblum.
Similar to what Mrs. Coleman said at Metro, this is a great program that I've been so happy to inherit, a training ground for social work interns. What I just said about Foundation Arts and Trauma can absolutely be held there. These folks are running lunchtime groups. They're creating stress reduction classes and support systems for kids who are struggling. And most importantly, they are creating a space for students to go to when they have problems that can be solved, even by folks who are developing that skill set. Obviously, these are folks who've had quite a bit of practical experience in the classroom, are developing their clinical experience. Laura Goldblum does an excellent job of communicating with Arts and Trauma, our social workers in the building, our school counselors, and making sure that we're not double dipping on kids, but just provides that space for them while also keeping that out of the assistant principal's office unless necessary to allow them to go on and do instructional leadership.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, I just appreciate Goldblum's connection with New Haven and also Comer School model and just some of the experiences you've already touched upon and named. So I appreciate kind of the values match, the cultural match that you try to make in your hires and partnerships. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're lucky to have her for sure.
All right, I just had a quick question. To your knowledge, is she pulling anybody in from Quinnipiac University's social work program? The reason I ask is because I work there and I would recuse myself if it's known. I know she might not know at this moment who she might be missing because it's.
Yeah, I don't know at this moment if we've secured all of them. I know that we've got some coming from Smith. I know that we've got some coming from. It might be Quinnipiac. I can't say for sure, Mr. Wilcox. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
related to this, but not on this specific item, is just this is a reminder about our staffing guidelines report and the gaps that we have. Just took a quick look at it. 16. We need 16.5 social workers over what we have in the district, and then also we're talking about needing 49 school climate culture specialists, et cetera, several other related like in-house suspension workers, et cetera, dropout prevention folks, just, all these related fields of, the social work side of the education process. And so I'm glad we're able to fit things in and then also get the students at these universities their needed hours. And as was heard, I think it was Ms. Coleman that mentioned this also could lead to hires to help fill these gaps. So
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Thank you all. I appreciate all your work, and a shout out to Pat DeMeo. It's been a couple years since I've had to put one of these in front of the committee. She was a great help helping me to do that. Thanks, Pat. I think I'm ready for the training wheels to come off yet again, second time around. But thank you.
What would we do without Pat?
I do not want to find out.
I just think we just shut the whole place down. That'd be just the end of it. All right, we'll move into the purchase order section. The first one is with school. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Please, Dr. Yarborough.
Just to your comment about the gap analysis, do you know, and maybe we can find this out later on, do you know whether the gap analysis is just for team members of New Haven Public Schools, like direct staff hires, or do we also include in that analysis those we are contracting with who may help support and fill some of those gaps?
So if I remember correctly, it was these are the gaps that we might be filling, particularly if we're not able to find somebody to hire, we might be filling with external people. I know we've heard testimony from people like Ms. Jackson about how, you know, you're not able to find the speech language pathologists that will work in the district, but you have to, required by law to provide those services, so you have to find in contract. So I don't recall if it I think it was for employees, not the hodgepodge or the collection of.
Yes, it was based on employees.
Okay. So it might be interesting to have an additional overlay of the map or some supplementary information of the gap analysis that says, you know, here's what we need, and how we're providing it through contract work, even though it may not be ideal, that we really want staff members, just to get a more accurate number of what services we're able to provide because of the hard work of people who go out and make these contracts. So, but thank you.
I think that's a good idea. And then also another thing that I've been trying to promote and have been talking to a member of the Bridgeport Board of Education as well, promoting the idea for other urban school districts in the state to do the similar kind of thing, so that we can personalize this to continue the success at the legislature on increased school funding, to be able to say, if I remember correctly, just today or yesterday, the governor mentioned some extra funding around, I want to say, social workers. And then also I heard something about school meals also. And so just to continue the advocacy in terms of the richest state in the country ought to be able to continue to increase what they provide for students. But it might be if Waterbury knew how many social workers they needed, in Hartford and New London and Bridgeport, just like we do, then changes the conversation.
Indeed.
All right, let's pop through some purchase orders. First one is with School Mint, Mr. Middleton. Is he on, or is somebody on to speak on School Mint? I thought I saw him earlier. Maybe I'm wrong. So my understanding, Schoolmint is the vendor we've used for the lottery software in the past. It seems to work, and this is I'm seeing, this was a multi-year contract. This went to in front of the alders and was approved. Now I'm remembering this. And so this is just the second year of the multi-year. Right? It was I'm looking at it now. Yes. It was a 3-year contract. I did go and double check. It did show up on an alders agenda. So that's what this is. So I guess there's really not a lot to discuss about this one. When we have a multi-year agreement, do we typically have each year the agreement showing up? We do? Okay. Well, there we go. We'll move on to number 2, which is a purchase order with Calm.com. Ms. Jackson.
Hi, so this is an agreement that we have with Calm. We have ever since the start of the pandemic, provided our staff with the ability to utilize the Calm app. This has given them the opportunity, again, in addition to us as a district being able to provide some staff wellness. This year, Calm, free of charge, has allowed for family members of our educators to also access the Calm app. We've gotten a lot of good reviews. A lot of our staff not only just use it for themselves personally. For those of you who are familiar with the Calm app, it has a lot of things for relaxation, but we also have many educators who've utilized the Calm app in their classrooms. Again, when the theme that we've been hearing is thread throughout about the ability for children to self-regulate. Again, this is giving the opportunity to do that within the context of the classroom as well. We do have educators who are doing that and providing those tools within the context of the classroom as well.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? My only question, I guess I have two quick questions. One is, you mentioned the anecdotal information, people seem to like it. I was just wondering if you also, if the company provides usage information, like you have 200 people using it or 500.
Yes, we do. We do for all of the things that you'll see here, Mr. Wilcox. I certainly can send that to the team.
Okay. I'm just.
And I actually have the hard numbers.
I'm assuming you had that information. I don't know that I particularly need to see it. I just, as you're evaluating something to determine its effectiveness, I'm always interested, is there, like Dr. Yarbrough, is there some data behind it as well as the anecdotal? So if that's being evaluated, I'm going to trust you all to be doing that. I guess my second question is the calm.com app available to board members? Maybe we could all use we just use district email account
during the board meeting.
Maybe we could all just do a calm.com meditation session and before a board meeting.
Yes, it can be part of our retreat.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyone with a New Haven Public School email, we certainly can get you access.
Okay. All right. That might be something, Dr. Negron, just to point out as a yet another benefit of board service, in addition to long meetings, is access to the calm.com app. And I'm saying that only half facetiously. Okay, we'll move on to number 3, which is the purchase order with Committee for Children. Also, Ms. Jackson.
Okay, so that is for our second step. So again, a lot of what you've been hearing today, specifically about pull-out services for social work support. Second step, really what that is really looking at our explicit social skills instruction in the context of classroom. So it's really integrating the academic and social emotional learning within the classroom. So a few years ago, we started, or actually I shouldn't say we started, we reignited some of what's been in New Haven Public Schools when we used to have a social development department, and really looking at explicit social skills lessons. Again, really with the notion of helping children to self-regulate. If you can remember when we had the Wellness Wednesdays, during the pandemic, we still continue in many of our schools utilizing second step at the K-8, and then at the high school, we've introduced what's called School Connect. And a lot of that really is skills about empathy, self-regulation, responsible decision-making, all of those standards for social emotional learning. Again, integrating it so that we're maximizing the instructional minute, also addressing the social emotional learning needs of our students within our authentic settings. Right now, over the course of the last couple of years, we've had over 2,000 lessons that have been implemented across our K-8 schools.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either. So let's move on to purchase order with NCS Pearson.
Yep. So NCS Pearson, this is, we have a product which is called Review 360. This is, again, I'll give the short version of this. This is a product that is able to allow schools to target, I shouldn't say target, sorry, it's a bad word, be able to analyze disciplinary infractions above and beyond what's reportable to the state for suspensions and expulsions. So it allows us to see things like time of day, location, classroom, grade, And it allows for principals to have real-time information about disciplinary infractions and then get responses. The way that we've approached this in the district, we've done it so that the schools are the ambassadors of this work. We have not had to go back and beg schools to do it. Principals have talked about it. We now have it in 21 of our schools and continuing to scale up. Again, the notion of this is that this particular product not only looks at our metrics above and beyond what's suspendable and expellable, to help shape behaviors, but it also has things embedded within the product, such as professional development. If you're struggling, to set up, with classroom management, for instance, there's embedded professional development. And also there's what we call our, I'm sorry, I'm losing the word, our assessments. There's internal assessments that you could utilize. We haven't utilized those because we created one as our own as a team, but there's also the ability to really look at universal screeners within that product as well. So there's universal screeners, there's professional development. And again, it allows for our principals in real time to be able to have real-time responses back to teachers above and beyond those things that are just for suspensions and expulsions.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either. So we will move on to number 5, which is the purchase order with Brightly Software. Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. So everyone is aware that we've had School Dude for many years, and School Dude was purchased by another company recently, and then purchased again by Brightly, which is a subsidiary of Siemens. And Brightly is our work order platform that we utilize for the managing our work orders through the facilities department. This platform is no longer supported by Brightly, and we have been going through the RFP process over the last several months to be able to award to a new vendor. However, it's just taking a little bit longer than what we would like. There's a lot of detail that needs to go into it. It's probably a year-long process of doing a transition to a new work order platform, and we need to make sure that we're doing it right. So we're making sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's with that, and we'll be presenting it to senior management team before we move on an award. This, even though it is no longer supported, has been serving us well. It serves the majority of our needs, but there are a lot of gaps, and that's part of the reason that we're putting it out for RFP. This is represents a significant increase, and that increase comes with the purchase of the company from its previous vendor. We would look at if we were moving into a new agreement with Brightly for their new platform, this cost would be absorbed into their proposal, and we would not be charged additional fee for running 2 platforms parallel, which is what we would need to do when we're looking at moving to a new system. So this is increased of 22%, which is significant. But the platform, again, has served us well, and we're looking forward to moving into a new platform that will continue to serve the district.
Great, thank you. Comments or questions? Well, I'm glad to hear you all are going through the process of looking for something different. It's a big jump. So, but understand, I mean, this is, thousands of people, hundreds of people could use this, and it's thousands upon thousands of work orders, things in the system. So I imagine there's lots of moving parts, especially over 40 plus locations.
Some of the changes that we're looking at making would include a better reporting platform to be able to track our work more effectively, a project management platform that would help us to be able to manage projects from a global perspective, and be able to create budgets that would be able to attach to specific projects. Also through this platform is the building management, the building permit process scheduling, where that's all of that information is captured. In the new system, we would be looking at linking these so that we would be able to attach work orders to requests for building use, and be able to track better what events are creating work and how much that work is costing the district. And it's all about the data and how we use it. And whatever platform we look to migrate to will have much more effective ability of capturing the data to help us make better decisions on how to implement our work.
Thank you. So we'll move on to number 6, which is purchase order Omnia or with Daikin applied. Mr. Finelli.
Hey, everybody. So yeah, this PO is for Dakin. It is for the chiller rental at Beecher, which covers July 1st through October 31st. Back in June, there was a previous approval for June 1st to the 30th. Good news is currently the bid is out to replace the chiller that should be closing on the 16th.
All right. So, and then once that new chiller is up and running, then the rental will no longer be needed. Right?
Exactly. Yep.
Comments or questions? Okay. I had none either. Let's go ahead and talk about number 7, purchase order with Daleen Flooring.
So this is with Delaney Flooring for the Hill House Auditorium. This is the replacement of the carpet, which was damaged due to the leaky roof over the years. This is part of the small refresh of the auditorium where we're doing the carpet over, paint, and ceilings.
All right. Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you. The roof repair has been completed?
No, it's currently starting. We had a little bit of a delay, acquiring the PO. So everything is on order. I believe they are starting demo on August 31st. Demo will last about 15 days or so. We're going to shut down, I think, the 30th and 31st because the school will be using the auditorium for orientation. And then construction will start back up the day after Labor Day. And they're saying construction will last probably about 5 to 6 weeks.
Okay. And
as soon as as soon as we're watertight, which will take about 2 weeks, we'll start the interior work in the auditorium. So I'm shooting for like Halloween to be totally finished.
Okay. Thank you. And that was my second question. If we were to install this carpet after the roof is repaired. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. As soon as we're watertight, we're going to go with it.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Watertight is key. Thank you for the update on the roof as well. Just as an aside, and also for Dr. Negron, I think looking at the auditoriums as a whole, I know that this is patchwork being done on a heavily used auditorium, but I think that good performance spaces, particularly since these get used by like city, the alders, others, science fairs, a variety of things. This might be a nice ripe area for trying to find some grant fundings to really, not just on the rooms themselves, but the equipment, the sound and lighting, etc. This might be a nice ripe area, because I imagine it's difficult to do with capital funds, finding enough money for all this. Okay. Next is, there are several here. Number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, number 12. I guess 8 is with for a PA speaker, and the others are for PA and clock upgrades. So maybe if you could please talk about the portable one, and then if it makes sense, go ahead and combine 9, 10, 11, and 12 in our conversation, since it looks like similar work, just at different locations?
I can speak to number 8.
Okay.
So number 8 is for, again, for portable speakers and AV equipment. In the past, we had a contractor that provided this for us. And since we have severed our relationship with that contractor, we're bringing more of this equipment in-house so that we can better manage its distribution and not have to pay the repeated rental fees for the use. So this equipment will help support events that are occurring within our facilities that are being used through the building permit process, as well as help support schools that are having events that require some kind of AV or speaker support to provide better sound to cover a larger area.
All right. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you for this item. Just trying to think back, did we, trying to think if there's an overlap of equipment. I think we approved something for outdoor stadium and then for the board, like portable equipment for the board meetings. Is there any overlap in terms of equipment and use?
No, so the ones that went through previously, one was for the hybrid setup for the board meetings. The other was for the actual speaker and sound mixing capabilities for one setup. This is going to provide microphones, cables, all of the ancillaries, along with a larger setup for outside events, which would be used for graduations, the larger graduations that are not held at either Bowen Field or the new Cross Field. The other setup that was previously approved was much smaller and more for when we have events more like our superintendent's meetings or for smaller gatherings, but still large enough to require sound amplification. This is for our larger ones, like when we had our graduations this year, we had to go through and rent several different setups that exceeded the cost of what it would be for us to purchase them. So not only does it allow us to be able to provide service for those events, but also allow us to be able to provide services throughout the year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So next is agreements 9 through 12, which seem to be similar.
Yeah, so 9 through 12 are for the upgrades of the Clapham Bell. These 4 schools, the systems have not been functioning properly for quite some time. The upgrades will include the installation and the materials, as well as the wireless clock, master transmitter, and clocks as needed in the classrooms. And this is part of the upgrade that was approved last month, where we added Hill House Cross and MBA.
Okay, are there comments or questions related to these 4? Dr. Yarbrough?
Thank you. 2 questions. One, is this related to the kind of the PA and bell system?
Yep.
Of
Same
the
thing,
different
PA, bell, Clapham Bell. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And my other question is, why not just one purchase order? Why are we? Is there any price advantage? Like, what's the advantage of bringing them for school versus just having one agreement with them?
One agreement for multiple schools, you mean?
Yes.
I don't know. I just thought this was the way I was directed to do it. Tom, I don't know if that's something you can maybe answer better.
When we look at tracking costs, to be able to do them individually, it's just a better way to manage the projects.
Okay. Okay. And is we assume no cost advantage to having one contract with them?
No, because these are purchased under state contract, so the pricing is fixed. Whether we buy 1 or 50, it won't matter.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. The last purchase order is with Valley Communications. Dr. Yarborough.
Mr. Wilcox, just one more question. Is this going to fix the PA system? Because we've heard about it a lot from people who are in the classrooms, and for safety reasons, they want to be able to manage the children and get things out in an emergency. Will this actually fix it for us?
This is a total replacement. So yes.
Okay.
They'll integrate it into our systems. It's a total replacement of, again, the clock, the bell, and the phone system. So yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox.
It'll fix these at these individual schools.
Exactly. At these 7 schools.
So
okay. Thank you.
So if there's issues at other schools that haven't been addressed yet,
we're on it.
Won't fix it. District wide. I almost said nationwide. It won't fix it nationwide either, or district wide, but hopefully school wide. Okay, we have many contracts here that we need to get through. So if we could be succinct, would probably be good, because we also have a discussion item or two. And so we'll jump right into these. The first 4 all appear to be direct commodity food purchases. So maybe we can deal with those as a block. And that's listed as Mr. Gormany and Mr. Young.
All right, good evening, everyone. As Mr. Wilcox mentioned, the first 4 are for the food service program. The first contract is for Carbonella and DeSorbo. Excuse me. This is the vendor that we used in this previous fiscal year that closed. They are for our fresh fruit and produce program. For the year, so this was done via RFP. Again, this is the same vendor that we used this past year that just closed. The second award is for J&A Baked Goods, which they provide the bread and bakery items for the food service program. So these are a lot of the bread products that are used within the meals that are served at the schools. These are primarily fresh products. There are some frozen products that were within the listing, but these are primarily fresh bread products as well. The third award for Loopy is also for fresh bread products. This is one of the local vendors in New Haven that we've used for the last 8 to 10 years or so. There are some products that J&A does not provide for the program that Loopy's does, such as hard rolls and a few other bread products as well. And the fourth award is for Nouveau Packaging. Though that is the vendor that provides some of the materials and supplies, such as the overall plastic wrapping and other items that are done with the food service program as well. So those are the 4 awards. Again, each vendor we've used this past fiscal year with no primary issues with the vendors. So I don't know if Mr. Young or Mr. Lamb want to add anything to those 4 awards.
Nothing to add at this time. I have met with all of these vendors in person. So pretty positive with the outcome and the work that we'll do this school year.
All right, thank you. And welcome, Mr. Young. I don't recall if you've been in one of our F&O meetings before. So
I have not. No, sir. It's first one.
As you can see, they are nothing but exciting. Any comments or questions connected to these 4 items? Hearing none. All right, thank you both. We will move on to several renewals. So number 5 is with Clearwater Industries. Who's covering this?
Yeah, I'm going to cover for Mr. Allegheny. So this is Clearwater Industries. They provide water treatment services to all of our chiller devices and water towers. It's part of our HVAC maintenance management plan. We have to maintain certain pH balances and chemicals within our water treatment plants to keep them free of Legionella and other things which degrade the functionality of our systems. And this is the, just hold up too much. This is the option 3 of 3 for renewal of this contract. Next year, this will go out for rebid.
Comments or questions? I had none either. We'll go number 7, renewal option 3 of 3 for Concrete Creations.
Oh, number 6, we skipped over.
I'm sorry, number 6,
Okay.
3 of 3 for Cohen's Key Shop.
So Cohen Key Shop does all of our key replacements. They cut all of our keys for the district. Security manages that process with the key replacements. However, Cohen Keys also does a lot of locksmith repair services for the district, and they've been very responsive over the years. A small local business that has been very reliable for us.
Thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either. We'll go on to now number 7, 3 of 3 renewal for Concrete Creations.
So Concrete Creations, they do a couple things for us. Let me just make sure I'm speaking of the right one. I'm sorry. So this contract is for duct cleaning services for our HVAC systems. We have a schedule of duct cleaning that allows us to be able to do all the schools over a certain number of years. This helps to make sure that the ducts, the HVAC ducts within all of our schools are clean, and helps to improve air quality and things like that throughout the district.
All right. Comments or questions? I had none either. Well, number 8 and number 9 are both renewals with Encore Holdings, one for on-call fire alarm inspection and repairs, and the other for on-call sprinkler maintenance.
That is correct. The Encore Holdings has been performing maintenance services and inspection services for our fire alarm systems and our sprinkler systems for several years. We have been very satisfied with their service. They're a very good company that has provided a myriad of emergency responses for us, and has been a pleasure to work with as well.
All right. Comments or questions? I had none either. Let's see here. In fact, I'm just going to quit saying that because I didn't have any comments or questions, I think, for any of these renewals, because there are renewals for the same amount as last year. They're doing good service, or we would have put it out to bid, or so I'm not going to have any questions for any of these. So, and in fact, Dr. Yarborough, if you do, just shout out as we get to them.
So number 10 is with Enviromed. They provide us with our on-call asbestos management services. This is part of the HERA program, which we are required to maintain by state statute. They provide us with an annual report on the status of the asbestos within all of our schools, as well as should we have asbestos abatement needs for us, they'll be able to accommodate those as well.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing on that, let's move on to 11.
So Wakatsuki Sons Tree Service has done a number of tree removals for us over the last 2 years that I've been here, and they have been, again, very responsive and have done good work for us. This is the option 2 of 3, so we'll have one more renewal after this one. This is again in the same amount as previous years.
Thank you. Number 12, renewal with K5 Corporation. Line striping.
So the line striping services goes along with our paving services as we move to create schedules for repaving of larger sections of our the school's parking lots. We will be restriping as well as looking at schools that have not been, or areas that parking lots that have not been restriped in a long time, to make sure that the parking lots have visible lines to help ensure that staff and visitors are parking in spaces that are appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, just curious about this selection process. I see this a sealed bid. Their vendor addresses in Massachusetts. Do they have a local presence? Or I'm curious about, us going out of state for this particular service.
As far as I know, there's no requirement for them to be in state, and I don't know if they have a local presence. I'm not aware. They may not, but when service is scheduled, they have been able to provide the service as needed, and it was done through sealed bid through purchasing. So they had to meet all of the necessary requirements for service to the city by city purchasing and by the Board of Ed purchasing policies. As far as I'm aware, there is no, other than the local purchasing preference or going through the small business development group, there is no requirement for a vendor to be in state.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the requirement for a vendor being in state, but just, the line striping. And I know we have local people who do it, so I'm just curious about paying for people to travel that far to do the service. But I also hear you talking about the process of the seal bid and how they came in and qualified for it. So no complaint, just a curiosity around it. Thank you.
I guess if I could, the one thing I would add is that also having seen some of these bid things that go out, if timeliness was key, so for instance, your on-call emergency plumbing, you might need somebody there, as part of the bid, the requirement is you must be on site within an hour or something like that, in which case we probably don't have a lot of emergency line striping. So, but I imagine
Yes. All of our critical services like HVAC, alarm system repairs, they all have response times built into their RFPs, along with the radius in which they have to be located to the city of New Haven.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Number 13, life and safety service supply, fire extinguisher services.
So this is a option 3 of 4 for fire extinguisher inspections that are required by fire code. The fire marshal will actually inspect these when he walks around to do his inspections. Fire extinguishers are required by state fire code to be serviced once a year by a certified provider and provide records that we would retain. And this is a service that's provided by Life Safety Services Supply.
All right. Next is number 14, renewal with Leor Excavating.
Leor provides us with sidewalk repairs for on-call sidewalk repairs. So if we have a damage from a storm or from some other event that causes an unsafe condition, we can call Laura to come in and make those repairs for us.
All right. 15 is select fence and guardrail renewal 2 of 3.
So Select Fence does all of our on-call fence repair for the district. So again, when we have a situation of vandalism or where a fence gets damaged or needs to be replaced, this would be the company that we make the call for on this.
All right. 16 is a renewal option 3 of 3 with Sports Construction of Connecticut.
So Sports Construction of Connecticut provides us with on-call gym equipment repair services. They provide us with also with the moving of our bleachers for the FLAC, which is the Floyd Little Athletic Center. Currently, Frank Finelli and I have been working on looking at how we can go about funding replacement of the bleachers at Floyd Little, which are at end of life and have required numerous repairs over the last 2 years, and is becoming more and more of an issue for us moving forward. This company has the expertise, and they are the only distributor of the type of bleacher that we have in the state of Connecticut. Having that knowledge and that ability of our bleacher systems has proven to be beneficial to us, given that the number of bleacher moves that we have has been increasing as the use of the Floyd Little Athletic Center has increased since COVID ended. So this is an issue that we are working toward a more long-term solution for when we look at replacing the bleacher systems. Currently, we're looking at a price tag of somewhere around $1 million or more to replace just the bleachers. But we are also concerned about the life of the floor within Floyd Little, and it's creating a more unsafe conditions that need to be addressed. So we're trying to figure out how we can allocate capital funding correctly to be able to get those situations taken care of.
Comments or questions? Do we charge for Floyd Little athletic system when there's like
Yes.
maybe we need a fix our bleachers surcharge to upcoming contracts for use in
we haven't. That may be something we want to talk about in our discussion item. But it's something that has, if we go back and track the dollars of bleacher repairs from the constant moving, I'm sure that number would be significant.
All right. Next is number 17, Tim's Enterprises. 17 and 18, I guess they're two different things.
So yes, so the number 17 is for to exercise option 3 of 3 for Tim's Enterprises to provide on-call painting services to the district. Tim's has provided work for the district for a long time. He does services for us that meet the needs of the district, and this is for a renewal of those services.
All right, comments. Okay, number 18 is for on snow.
I would like to withdraw that.
Okay.
That should not have been put on. I'm sorry that was. We're going to actually be rebidding all of the snow later on this year.
Okay, makes sense.
Number 19 is option 2 of 3 for on-call floor repair services from from not to exceed 25,000. This is for repair of tile and carpeting throughout the district. Tim has done a number of jobs for us that have met the needs of the district, and we will be exercising option 2 of 3.
Right. Number 20 is option 2 of 3 for total lighting.
So total lighting, let's make sure I'm getting this correct. Okay, yes. So total lighting provides us with inspection services for our emergency lighting systems in all of our schools. This is a service that's required by state fire code and is required to be completed by a person who has the appropriate licenses and can meet the inspection requirements set forth by the state fire code. This is a large task. We have quite a few. So this also covers replacement of those damaged systems when they're felt to be not meeting the standard or damaged or in need of replacement. This is another one that was done on sealed bid.
Right. Number 21 is option 2 of 3 with Wings Testing and Balancing Company.
So yes, Wings Testing and Balancing Company will be providing on-call fume hood cleaning services. So in all of our chemistry labs, we have fume hoods, which are used for exhausting chemicals for the chemicals from the chemistry labs as they perform their testings. These are required by fire code to be tested and cleaned annually. And Wings Testing and Balancing Company has a long history of providing these services. I've actually used them in the hospital world for many years as well.
All right. And finally, a big one, contract for renovating South Building at 21 Worcester Place.
Yeah, so this project is for outfitting of the space at 20 Worcester Place, which is going to house the science and math department heads. We started this project by fully abating the space and hiring an architect for design and MVP purposes. We awarded it to pre-construction, who has done work in the past with the city. They did come in as the lowest bidder.
All right. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarborough. There must be a question with that puzzled look.
Yeah, just you said this is the house staff?
Currently, right now, it's the house department heads. This was a request by the previous superintendent, as well as Keisha Hannons. There is discussion with Tom and I and Dr. Negron about possibly other staff going there. But we did find that there definitely is a need throughout the district that we don't have enough space. We don't have enough offices. So there might be some moves throughout the area to house other department heads in here or other faculty in here, but it will be for staff.
Okay, thank you. And do we own this building?
We do. Yes, it's actually part of Conti. So it's the old New Light. I think it was a library back in the day.
Okay.
Yes.
And I see that it's carryover ESSER funds.
So we are using ESSER too. Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you clarified what I was asking, what I was going to ask, which was what was the current thought as to who would be moving into this space. So All right. Well, we've got through a long list. So I would like to make a motion, and that is remembering that there was one agreement pulled and one contract pulled. So I would like to, I will make the motion. I move that we approve the 3 abstracts, the 17 agreements, the 13 purchase orders, and the 21 contracts. Send them to
Second.
the full board with the recommendation to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So those will move to the board with the reminder that it was the one Head Start related one, which I'm blanking on the vendor name, and then the one Mr. Lamb just mentioned was he was pulling because they're going to go a different way with this. And also that there was the questions around the MOU with Montessori schools to putting it on the separating it out on its own, and then having clarification on implications of the agreement going to 2027. Okay, so the last thing on the agenda are a couple discussion items around school building use permit fees and rules. There's policy governing that, which has not been updated by the district in many, many years. Won't talk about Series 3000 policies. I think for the interest of time, I could just real quick, if people want to take a look at the school use policy, you'll see, Mr. Lamb?
I do have a presentation that I would like to give.
I understand. I just wanted to deal with the policy thing first because I want to make sure I want to talk about that since it governs the use of the facilities. I'm not able to find a previous version of policy 1330, so if someone has it hidden away, I would take a look at it, but this is typical based on the CABE model policy. A couple changes that I wanted to highlight about it that you'll see in there is I'm just making some clarifications that when we're talking about our facilities and our buildings and grounds, we're also talking about things like parking lots. And if I remember correctly, I also added something there that the model policy says that these people should reapply every single year. But I also think that the district should also be able to make longer term arrangements with notification to the board about that, if that makes sense. And it doesn't impact other things. A couple other things to mention. It does dictate that school use, school district needs trump all other needs or requests to use the buildings. So we protect our educational use of these spaces, which are dedicated to it, but we're also acknowledging that they're public buildings. We want to make them available. And then the final thing was, and I don't think it's currently the case, the board does not approve the details of the plan on how these things are rented out or loaned out or used. The board in the policy, and I think in the past, says you're allowed to do this. We just need to know how it's done. So I noticed in the presentation questions about seeking approval to make changes to fee structures and things. I think you just have to, it's my opinion, and it's also if this policy passes, those are things that it's up to the district to figure out. They do have to come to us and explain it, answer questions, make changes, but I do think that it's administratively, we don't have to approve these, and I don't think we've approved them in the past, although we do periodically look at it and ask questions and ask things to be tinkered with. But any questions or comments about the policy thing? I'd like to move on that next meeting. So I wanted a chance for people to hear that and then think about it and then come with concrete changes. Dr. Yarbrough.
Thank you. This is just a clarifying question. In terms of community relations, it talks about various groups intended to serve youth under the age of 21 may use the school property, and it names the Boy Scouts of America, Big Sisters of America, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Future Farmers, Girl Scouts, Little League. Do these current, I know some of these are contractors that we pay for summer programs, for some after school programs. Do they currently use our facilities, or do they currently have their own facilities and our students go there? I'm just wondering if we are paying and charging, just how that works financially, and if we have any preference around them housing their services in our building while we are.
So I'll just briefly mention the languages in there in the policy. My understanding is that Title 36 of the U.S. Code specifically says school districts cannot prohibit use of buildings by those groups. They're mentioned, I think, by name. So I think that's part of the reason why this policy spells that out. That
I see.
That those groups are able to do that. I added in the language that such uses should need to be governed by the rules and procedures. But as to, I'm trying to remember if, because we do work with, like the Boy Scouts of America, we just talked about previously, was using one of their facilities, their camp. So that's obviously not one of ours, but if,
Right.
I don't know about the Boys and Girls Club, where the location of their after school programs, if it's in their space or ours.
I mean, does anybody know that are these programs housed? Because we have a number of programs who serve youth, and I'm curious, are they housed in their own places, or are they on school property servicing our kids?
FFA actually did that one. That's at Sound School, Future Farms of America, and actually they've changed their name to just FFA now, but because they want to capture more than just farming. But that's a Sound School program only.
Okay. All right.
So my understanding, if I remember correctly, when we look at something for an after-school program, it does talk about the location of the program. I'm not.
Yes.
Remembering.
So when an application is submitted to Heather Barbarata is our events coordinator for the district. She plans and schedules all of the events that come in through the district. She also verifies insurance, location of the vendor. If they're located within New Haven, it sets off one set of tasks. If they're located outside of New Haven, it sets off a different set of tasks. There's a whole flow chart that goes with how the decisions are made around whether or not they're charged and how much they're charged.
Okay, thank you. And this policy seems to give us and them flexibility for where they conduct services. So, okay. Thank you.
And then the final thing, just the clarification on that I did add in the language that the superintendent or his or her designee may approve longer use agreements on a case-by-case basis with notification to the board. It's part of a sentence that says people do have to apply annually. So an example of that could be something happening at Floyd Little Athletic Center, where you might want working with some sports festival or something. They might want to have some sort of commitment for, we want to do it in your thing, but we need to plan to do it for the next 3 or 4 years. This gives the district flexibility to say, yes, we can commit to that. You just have to confirm each year that this is still going on as planned. But I just wanted to clarify that that's part of what I'm looking at, or suggesting that we do. So that was the policy piece. If we could, it'd be good to pass it onto the governance committee next meeting, since we are talking about this. But Mr. Lamb, you wanted to show us
Yes,
the presentation.
please.
Please feel free to
So,
share your screen.
So thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. So Heather Barbarata, as I stated, is our director of events. She's the primary person for scheduling of all building space and parking lots and parks for the district. She put together kind of an overview of the program, how it currently is utilized, and some of the things that she has encountered in her time doing this for the district. She's been providing this service to the district, not only with ABM, but also with Go-To Services, almost the entire time that she's been with the district. Goes almost 6 years now. So she has a wealth of knowledge around some of the obstacles and some of the challenges that are associated with this program. And so this is kind of, like I said, this is kind of an overview. So it's called a building use permit. This building use permit establishes an approval of property insured organization to host a program or event which takes place in a NHPS location. So that's any NHPS location within the district would go through this process to make sure that they're the party that's using the space is insured, because we have had property damage, and is we're identifying how they're using the space so the space can be properly maintained and secured by our security department and by our facility staff to open the building properly at the appropriate time, because we do have a lot of after hours events and a lot of weekend events, and I'll get into more of the events as we go through the presentation. So who can use NHPS facilities? As we stated before, the primary and the most prioritized use is to NHPS programs. NHPS partnership programs, community program members, and outside commercial organizations. The facilities building use permit process does not include FLAC or career. Why those? Or I'm sorry, not career. Co-op. Co-op, because of the theater. There's different needs for that school to be able to utilize the space that they have, and FLAC because that's managed specifically by Eric and his team. So those two do not go through this process. So how do I obtain a building use permit? Kind of these are the steps that are followed by all of the applicants. Ideally, we would want them all requests to be made 3 weeks in advance of the start date, so we can verify all the paperwork and get all of the items in place that need to be in place for the event to happen successfully. They need to accept all of the rules and fees that are associated with the use of the space. And then tier assignment. Tier assignment has gotten a little difficult over the last couple years because there were some concessions made by previous leadership staff long before I was here, or long before Heather was here, and those concessions have a lot of times we get from the different people coming into, organizations coming in to use our space. Well, so and so did this for us last time, and they show the proof of what was done, and then we end up making the concession, and they get charged a different fee than what they probably should have. Proof of insurance, this is another large one that has become more and more needed. A lot of our building use is done by organizations, and in order for us to be able to ensure that when there is building damage, that it's handled appropriately, and if there is an incident within the building while the organization is present, that they have the appropriate insurances, just like all of our vendors do when they use our space, or when we have a vendor that's servicing the district, that they have the appropriate insurances. All of the vendors that are using our space do the same. And then payment in advance. Payment must be made to the facilities department within 10 business days prior to the event, if there is an associated charge. And then certified bank check or money orders are payable to New Haven Public Schools are acceptable. So as the payments come into the facilities department, they are processed and passed on to finance. After they're processed by finance, not really sure where they go. That's something that we have to work with finance on, determining exactly how these funds are used, and where those dollars go within the district. So when someone would like to do a building use permit application, the applications are found on our website on the operations page. In the facilities department, there is a link that will take them to a fillable PDF, similar to what you see on the screen. And this has all of the required fields for processing an application, so we can determine which tier the organization falls into. And then these are the 3 tiers. First tier, fully subsidized, includes school, any event that's held by the school, student, teacher, or parent, and government-sponsored events, student clubs, school athletics, parks and recs programs, which there are a lot of parks and rec programs that occur during the summer months, and any special meetings sponsored by the school system, which are of general interest, educational, parent-teacher organizations, elections, there's a wide selection of fully subsidized events that happen. And then the part 2 is the partially subsidized events that are public interest, non-government or non-school related events, but are still local New Haven based nonprofit organizations, churches, meetings, and other requests that are not covered in tier 1. Pretty much anything that's a New Haven based organization that is having some kind of an event within our school system. And then tier 3 is for market rate, which is commercial or external organizations, non-New Haven based organizations. So similar things would be celebrations, movie productions, sports tournaments, private dance companies. All of these types of things have scheduled events within the district. So these are our 3 tiers, and what the current rates are. This is an example of what we would charge for each area. The tier 1, there's an hourly custodial rate, which is all of our custodial staff that attend these events are on overtime. So there's additional dollars that we may or may not achieve by having charging the rates that we charge, and I can get into more of that in a little bit. Security staff, again, there's a subsidized rate and a tier 3 rate, which again, when we have these events, they'll be on overtime, so they'll be will be paying out an overtime rate. If we are serving food at an event, cafeteria workers could be utilized, and that food service of that food has to be approved by the Department of Health. So that again, a tier 1 subsidized rate and a full rate. And then in the past, we had an AV technician in the district that would provide AV services. Since we don't have that position in the district anymore, it's something that we have provided for a vendor to come in and provide those services for companies that cannot do that. And then they would just pay the rates that are published here. And then an energy surcharge, we have to, when we have to open a building, it requires us to turn on all of the HVAC for the building. The lights come on. Schools that are used on the weekends, when they're closed, the rates of energy consumption are far less than if they were open. And this was a surcharge that was added in order for us to be able to recoup some of that expense. And then the second grid here shows all of the tier 1 and tier 2 costs for specific areas of the school. Auditoriums, gymnasiums, cafeterias, kitchens, classrooms. Paramus Hall is a specific building that can be rented out for space. These are flat fees. So these are not the first 4 hours and then each additional hour. This is one flat fee, whether you're there 1 hour or 10 hours. So that's something to consider. So some of the challenges and benefits of building use accessible to the community and residents, provides a stable environment for at-risk youth. We do a lot of, during the summer months, we do a lot of basketball camps and a lot of gym use and a lot of pool usage. We would utilize our pools more for the community once they're open. But the Parks and Rec Department utilizes our space for a lot of these types of programs, which really, has had a positive impact on the community, and we do get a lot of positive feedback from the Parks and Rec Department and from others about these programs. Some of the challenges, vandalism. We do get a substantial amount of vandalism to some of our schools. Liability and risk exposure. We've had some issues with fights and things missing, and some things that were unable to be located after a specific program was in a space. And those have been worked out with those vendors. And then the expense for staffing and utilities and maintenance, which we can actually quantify that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then security implications. Again, we have some parties in our schools that we do not know who they are. We do not know. They have access to areas of our buildings that they probably shouldn't. And that's where we get into the expense of staffing and security. If we have we've had multiple occasions where security has found people just wandering around our schools when we've had open basketball in a gym, and security's found an open door that somebody had walked through, and now we have unmonitored people walking around our buildings. So that's just one of the challenges that we've encountered. And why is it so important to manage building use? Well, again, risk management. All parties must be insured, providing protection to self-insured, the self-insured city of New Haven. We do get a lot of damage. Accountability, the district is not on the hook to pay damages. And Heather is very good at receiving feedback from the principals on how their space is returned to them after the events. And sometimes there is damage and sometimes there's not. And when there is, we have a very good process of working with the vendors and for the most part, good relationships with them to where we're able to recoup or recover some of that expense. Financial, there's a significant financial impact to the school district for labor expense, for security, and for the facilities team covering these events. And I'll get into more detail into that in the next slides coming up. And then asset protection, that goes more into formal scheduling, allows proper staffing and custodial, reduces theft and damage to buildings. So this is just a peek at the number of scheduled events that we've had going back to the 1920 year. That's 20,000, approximately 20,000 individual events scheduled through this permit process, where 64% of them are internal NHPS programming. That's the blue on the bottom. And then city programming is the orange, and then outside organizations is the gray. So yes, we have a significant level of internal programming with a smaller number of city programming, but that number is increasing. You can see we had a large dip with COVID, but we've started to come out of that over the last 2 years. And we've only seen, an increase in these numbers from month to month. So as we start to look at how we are going to staff and manage these events in the future, I think it's important for order of magnitude for us to understand what the impact of this is. So when we are scheduling an event, this kind of just takes you through what the system looks like. So on a typical event calendar for April 2023, this is a Saturday, kind of takes you through all of the different events that are scheduled for 1 week. Going into the next week. Just kind of gives you an idea of what we look at. And getting into some of our expense. So the average overtime rate for a custodial employee is $44.38 an hour. For security, it's $45 an hour. Utilities, we were able to calculate down to what our hourly consumption is, and then translate that into a cost. So if we are operating a school on a Saturday where it would typically be closed with temperature setbacks and lighting turned down and everything, that would be at one rate. And then if we were to do it with a fully functioning school where we've had to turn the AC, air conditioning or the heat to a more reasonable level, turn all the lights on, have a fully functioning building, then that's where the 3771 comes from. A lot of time went into trying to make sure that number was correct. And It's kind of an average of all of our schools, because every school has a different level of consumption and a different level of need when it comes to being fully operational. But the 3771 again was just kind of an average of what that looked like across the district. And then approximate total overtime hours, 3,900 is the typical for covering events. And we took that 3,900 hours across all of the services. So 3,900 hours of custodial overtime, 3,900 hours of security overtime, and 3,900 hours of utilities operation as an average. And those come out with approximate to an approximate cost to the district of roughly $495,000 for the year. So when we look at all of the events scheduled, event days and estimated cost to the district, starting in 2018-19, we have reoccurring schedules, event days and estimated cost, and then fees collected. The fees collected represents how much we were able to recover or charge to those events as they were scheduled by the Heather and the facilities department. And what services were provided is the estimated cost. So did they get a security guard? Did they get an extra security guard? Did we have to provide additional custodial services because it was an event that was going to cause a lot of debris and things need to be cleaned? And there is a standard number of that would need to be provided for each event. So if we had to open up a school for one event, there may be several others that are attached to that one event. So that fee would be carried over into each of those organizations to again help recover the cost. Unless that school was only open for that one organization, then that may be a loss for the district, because opening up one school for one classroom or one area, we still have to have the custodian still has to go, security, depending upon the event, would have to go. So those costs are kind of stable. But you can see each year we're at a loss of around 240 to 265, 260. This is the middle year, the 2021 year is the COVID year, with a loss of only 22,000. And then this kind of breaks it down even more, looking at each individual school and the number of events that were scheduled in each school. So we have some schools that are utilized very heavily and others that are not. Where this becomes an issue is during the summer months, when we have to start scheduling maintenance on our buildings and building cleaning. It becomes challenging to get into some of the buildings when the schedules are as full as they are. And then unique organizations served. So these are we have a lot of organizations that are repeaters that come back multiple times a year. These are the individual organizations that have been identified that come through Heather's desk. So in 1819, it was 457 different vendors that requested service through the building permit process. This past year, we had 361. So it's an enormous number for one person to manage. how do our fees compare to other districts? So one of the things that we did, I asked Heather to do, was find a district that looked like New Haven as closely as possible, and that district was Bridgeport. With 36 schools, they have roughly the same number of students. The district minority enrollment was the same. The percentage of economically disadvantaged was within a percentage point. So these are all statistics that were readily available to us. And their rates, they have a very different fee style than we do. They do a 4-hour minimum. So they charge by the hour for their locations. And their fee structure looks like it has increased as time has gone by. Ours has been stagnant for several years. So as you can see, for an auditorium, it's in 1819, it was $340 for the first 4 hours, and then $90 each additional hour. In 1920, it was $350 for the first 4 hours, with $95 each additional hour. And then going up to the 21-22 year, $370 with $105 for each additional hour. So they have significantly over time increased their fees to the use of their facilities, and this is for everybody. There is no tier system. So regardless of whether you're a Bridgeport-based organization, or if you are an organization from another town, you're paying the same rate. Now, I don't know that that's something that we want to do, but as we look at what our current process is, it's beneficial to understand how other districts utilize their space. And then just to do a sample comparison, so a simple request, community-based group is requesting to run a basketball tournament and a lunch at a high school gym. This is very typical of something that would occur. They've requested the gym and cafeteria to be used on a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You have, for this event, these are the typical fees that would be associated with that event. For New Haven, as of right now, they would be charged $400 for the gym, $300 for the cafeteria, $384 for custodial, $384 for security, and then an additional $320 for utilities. For Bridgeport, it'd be $790 for the use of the gym, $385 for the use of the cafeteria, $537 for custodial, $382 for security, for a total of $2,994. So you're looking at roughly a $300 difference just on that one event. So if we extrapolate that over however many events that we utilize for the year, potentially that could be a significant number. Not that we want to make money off of what we are providing to the community, but we certainly need to cover our expenses, especially as we look at moving into a time where general fund dollars are more and more scarce. So some of the things that we want our facilities and I are looking for everyone to consider. Opening and closing dates for summer requests to be put in by April 1st. The last 2 years have been extremely challenging given the number of requests for summer building use that have been put in, and a lot of them come in very last minute. And it has become extremely challenging for Heather and the security department and the facilities department to provide the needed services for those events. So we're just looking to have a little bit of a buffer. So if we require all summer requests to be put in beginning April 1st and be submitted by June 14th. That gives us the appropriate amount of time to be able to process all the information and ensure we're verifying insurance, getting all of the organizations in the proper tier, making sure that resources are available to accommodate all of the requests that come in. And then a fee adjustment. A fee adjustment would help to cover the costs of the custodial services and the security department, as well as some of the energy consumption costs. We are recommending moving to the hourly based type of fee structure, similar to what Bridgeport has. What that would look like, we're not entirely sure, but moving to that kind of structure would put us in a better position to be able to, one, recover our costs more effectively, and then two, it would eliminate the confusion around tiering. There's a lot of questions that come from tiering and a lot of misuse of the way that the tiering structure is set up. And by moving to a flat hourly fee, there is no confusion. It's straightforward and it's the same for everyone. And then roster submission. So one of the areas that has been a challenge is a lot of organizations that come in and provide services to the district that submit requests state that they are providing services to New Haven students, and when they do that, they get a subsidized tier. But we have no way of verifying that that's accurate. So we want to be able to seek permission for programs to verify and request rosters of students to be able to verify that they're meeting the requirements of the tier that they're requesting. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Lamb, for the presentation, and for ABM for their work on the presentation and putting it together. For me, very clear, very informative. So thank you for this. Two questions. One question is on my page. So tier 2, that's partially subsidized. I see fundraising events, and then the example was like a parent-teacher organization fundraiser. So are all fundraising events tier 2? I'm curious why that parent-teacher organization wasn't a part of tier 1.
So the tiers that you have were created before me, so I can't answer as to why certain things are in it or not. But it's what was passed down to me, so that's what's been the practice.
Okay, thank you. And my other clarifying question, on the page after that, when it talks about our hourly rates by tier, staffing and room rentals, there's costs associated with tier 2 and tier 3. Is it the case that tier 1 pays nothing? Is that what that X means?
Correct. So tier 1 is fully subsidized. They don't pay anything to the district for the use of the facility.
Okay. And based on your recommendation, you were saying that we should consider moving to an hourly charge, but the staffing and room rentals here give hourly numbers for custodial security, cafeteria worker. So do we currently have it set up where it's billed hourly, or they pay one fee, but we have to pay hourly to our staff security?
That is correct. So the way that it's currently set up is the fee for the space is a flat fee, but they tell us how long they're going to need the space for, and then we give them a invoice that states excuse me, for the use of 12 hours of custodial time, it's going to be X. For the use of 12 hours of security time, it's going to be Y. And then the flat fee for the use of the space is, A. And the charge for the custodial services and the security changes depending upon how many hours they're requesting, but not for the space itself.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So, yes, indeed. Thank you for the presentation. And I think, I mean, in theory, everything it makes sense. It's reasonable. It was well explained. I like the detail. I like the information about Bridgeport as a comparison. I think the next thing would be to what would this mean in actuality? So, in order for things to happen, I think it would need to be like, what would the tier structure look like? What would the new cost structure look like? And so I would suggest a changing of and I have it here, I'll just put it in the chat, the current fees and rules guidelines that has that information. And I think that would be the next step, because the next question someone's going to have is, okay, what's that mean? So, okay, moving to hourly sounds great, but what would you charge per hour and what would that look like? And I think the best way to do that would be to maybe update the information on page 2 of the link I just sent, which outlines what the tiers are and what the costs are. And that is the thing that makes it the most sense. Personally, I'm fine with changing the fee structure. I'd be fine with changing the tier structure in terms of there's 3 tiers, maybe we need 4. You're having like a block single use fee and you want to move to hourly instead. That makes sense, but a lot of it's just going to be, what's that look like? And then I would also be then prepared to know what it would mean for some of the current stuff that we're using. So I think that would be something that people would want to know is, well, what's that mean for this organization or that thing? And to be able to say, like you had that example of a basketball tournament, I would just maybe have like what this would mean. That was what it would mean here and what it happens at Bridgeport. My suggestion is this is what it would mean in New Haven under the proposed new fee structure and tier structure. Those are the first things that come to my mind after hearing the presentation and having a chance to read it, think about this. From a policy standpoint, I don't know if you need our permission, our approval or not, because I am not able to find a copy of the current building use policy 1330. It's not posted on the district website. So it might say the board must approve, or it might say the superintendent does this and then notifies the board. I don't know.
Mr. Wilcox, if I may.
Please.
Just wanted to share that this is more some brainstorming that we're putting in front of you. I am certainly not asking that any decision be made or that we intend to move forward. Just sharing some of the ideas at this point.
And that sounds great. I'm just suggesting if you want to move forward with some changes for this year or for next, I think people would be amenable to it, especially since it's so well explained and with the details. But the next steps would be what would the new structure look like and how would it address some of these issues?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, 2 thoughts, maybe 3. One, where you have the shortfall for what the cost is to the district versus fees collected. I think it needs to be reported somewhere that the district is making a $240,000 in-kind contribution. It's a significant amount of money for our bottom line, so I think that should be captured and reflected somewhere if it's not already. I think it is positive for our buildings to be occupied and utilized. And also for that use to be consolidated as much as possible. So perhaps there can be, this may already be happening, but perhaps there can be maybe when people submit a request for a building or location, either two things. One, they could request three. They have to name three that they would be happy to be in. But maybe we should make a particular effort to have a building be filled on a Saturday or evening versus having one group in one school building and they're the only group there, and then another school building somewhere else has one or two groups in it. Maybe there's a way we can be more energy efficient and cost effective. I do recognize that there's probably preference for neighborhood and walking and amenities, but to the degree that we can consolidate and combine some of the building use, that would be positive, I think, just in terms of economics and in terms of an environmental impact.
So absolutely, that does happen now. As the requests come in, we are always looking to accommodate as best we can, but we also take into consideration where events are occurring and how we can most effectively schedule them to, one, not disrupt school operations, because we want to make sure school operations are number one. And we work with the principals to make sure that the events that are occurring within their schools are not in any way interfering with what they're doing. And then if there is an opportunity to have an event occur within a school that already has an event in it, that's where we go first. And then working with the organization to ensure that their needs are being met where they are. If they need to have a space that is specific to their need, that does not have an organization already scheduled to be within the building, then that's what we do if we need to.
Okay, thank you. Noted. And in terms of how we identify the true expense or financial investment of these programs, for those that are housed within New Haven Public Schools, perhaps after school programs, which come through the Finance Committee for funding, or the after school programs, maybe within the dollar amounts that we approve, the cost for facility usage should be within that dollar amount so that we know, like, otherwise, I don't know where the 240,000, that shortfall, I don't know how we're paying for it. But if there's a fee associated with staffing and cleaning and utilities for an after school program or for a summer program within the contracts that we approve, then the money is counted there. We can see it. I'm not sure if that financially makes sense, but I'm just trying to figure out a way of really capturing the true investment that we're making for the programs and our students.
I can work with Linda on creating a better tracking methodology for that.
If it makes sense, and if Mr. Wilcox approves, I don't want to give extra work, but I do think we should capture the amount somewhere.
Yeah, I'm happy for y'all to do whatever you think is best to move this forward. My final two thoughts on this, and then I'm going to have to go here pretty quickly as we're approaching the 3-hour mark, is one is in future versions of this presentation, if there are going to be some, I do think it's also good to make clear that these costs that the district incurs are most likely all operating costs. And we currently have an operating deficit forecasted for this current year. And then also, while this is brainstorming at this point, there still is that current structure that's going to be happening now and for at least the fall till the end of the calendar year, I would assume. And I don't see any issue personally with adjusting the rental rates, etc., of the current if they've not been changed for several years. So, for instance, if a auditorium for tier 3 we currently will charge $850, I don't see why that couldn't be $900 for this year. So adjusting the current rates while you come up with the ideal system moving forward. So I think that that's one thing that it might be difficult for things that are already in place, if, you know, for people that might be making plans, but to say that starting on October 1st, we're moving to this is what it costs or something like, I mean, I'm personally not against that. But Dr. Yarbrough?
Yeah. Additionally, I'm interested in, I don't need a report back on this. I'm not requesting a report back, but properly administering the tiers and what impact that has. It seems to be we're not, right now, if you were to properly administer the tiers, it's not that we are inventing something that wasn't already in place. It just wasn't, my understanding is that it just wasn't followed. But if we were to properly administer the tiers, you know, what would that do for our costs and investment? You know, does it move the needle enough to make sense to do it? To the degree that we can be equal or kind of follow through on what we lay out, that might be positive for us to be and to do.
My final thought is related to that where it might be more useful if the policy does say that the board shall approve this, so that might provide backup for staff when there are these questionable things. Because I imagine now somebody says, oh, you're in this tier, and somebody then says to a board member or to an alder or to somebody, wait a minute, no, I'm not in. And then
yes, that has
pressure to go, well, I guess if we look at it this way, it's tier 2 and not tier 3. And so having a kind of clear outlines so that can be fairly applied. And then it's a matter of just following exactly what you all said. So that's the way it is.
And those types of incidences have happened.
Yeah, I'm aware, and sometimes it's, you know, the board member or the alder or somebody is just reacting to a constituent or somebody saying, hey, this isn't fair, and they're just raising the issue. But I mean, I am always interested in providing staff with the clear directions of what should happen and then letting them do their jobs without interference is always a key thing. So as you consider the changes, that's something that might be worth thinking about. Is there anything else we need to talk about on this item tonight? Dr. Yarbrough, will you provide a motion to adjourn so that I can second?
Moved.
Seconded. We'll vote. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.